Welcome everyone to All Growth. I'm your host Alvaro Gamboa. This is episode number 3. I'm happy to have you here. Today's episode is going to be discussing America in all her gore and in all her glory. We're going to be discussing what it means to be American, what has it meant historically, what does it mean locally and globally. We're going to be discussing everything that we have been fed to believe about America the Great. So that includes, America the beautiful, the greatest country in the world. We're going to see if what we've been taught is all real or is it all a lie. Finally, we'll be addressing the issues keeping us from growing as a country and as a people, and what has been done or what can be done to create a better country for ourselves and for America, essentially. Today's episode is brought to you by the creative geniuses over at Posh Faces. Shout out to the Beard Gang, calling all Beard Gang members. If you're interested in getting your beard finessed and getting beard swag on, what better option than Posh Faces? All natural products, includes natural herbs, natural plants, and they're all vegan. The beard kit is doing a number on my skin, if you can see, and if you've seen, oh my god, it's doing an amazing rejuvenation of my beard. So shout out to Posh Faces. For those wondering where can I find Posh Faces, go ahead and look up poshfaces.com and go ahead and use our special discount code GROWTH for extra 10% off your purchase. So head on over to poshfaces.com again and use our discount code promo GROWTH for a 10% discount on all your items. So we're going to talk about today what America believes to be number one. Like, a lot of people hold America to be number one in a lot of regards. So let's think about that. Like, what is America the title holder in, right? Like, what does America get the gold in? As of lately, we've gotten the gold in mass shootings, school shootings too, mass incarceration, obesity, the most expensive healthcare in the world, the most expensive military force in the world, and the most expensive number one weapons exporter in the world. That's off the bat 7 golds in areas that we should not strive to be the gold standard in. Why is America number one in these things? Well, if you look at where we put our focus, where we put our attention to, and what we're best at, we are best at things that deteriorate and destroy individuals and societies. Right, we're number one in shootings because we love our guns. Right, we love our pistol packing brothers and sisters, and like, that's not to say anything against the Second Amendment, but these ideals behind bearing your own arms have been perverted. These ideals that we need to stay strapped at all times has been promoted by those in the lighter hues. Those with darker hues, like my black and brown brothers and sisters, it's frowned upon to have weapons. So what America is number one in are these ideas of destruction and these ideals that have taken over us. Like, for example, mass incarceration. We're the mass incarceration nation. Right now, if you've seen the documentary on Netflix 13th, which I highly recommend because I've seen it a multitude of times, and every time you watch there's always a new hidden gem that you didn't pick up the last time, we realize that we're a mass incarceration nation. We're a nation that values labor, not people labor, and slave labor to be exact, and incarcerated labor, prison labor. Prison incarceration is slavery reformed, the grandchild of slavery. These are things we value things that deteriorate the individual. We value obesity. Why are we number one in obesity? Because we value conveniency, we value feeding ourselves poisons in every form, value our immediate satisfaction, our immediate gratification over our delayed gratification in our optimal health. These are things that we value, like we've come to cherish and hold near and dear to ourselves, and you know it because we have the world's most expensive healthcare. It seems perverted, but a lot of politicians and a lot of healthcare industrialists seem to value that, the fact that we have insulin and other life-saving medications that are worth thousands of dollars more than it costs to make, more than it costs to reproduce. Where's that money going to? You already know it's going to the CEOs and the stock boards. You already know it's going to the stock market holders, the shareholders. You already know that none of that money is going into the betterment of customers. It's not going into the better of patients, because they're not seen as patients. They're not seen as customers. They're seen as the product. They're trying to hustle you. They got a cure, and they're trying to sell it to you. They're trying to peddle it to you. So they know you're going to pay your entire life for it. So you do. People who have diabetes get charged their entire life savings for vials of insulin. It's not right. As a matter of fact, you look over to our northern border brother, you look at Canada. Canada has arguably one of the better healthcare systems in the world. And millions upon millions of Americans every year go over to Canada, hop the border to get medicines and come back. And we don't pay attention to that, or we do, but we don't. And we understand like why America is, but we don't challenge these ideals of why we shouldn't be number one in these categories. And the main number one is like me being military force and weapons exporter. Why does America already claim the world's most advanced military force, and yet from like we still aren't happy about that? We're number one, but leaps and bounds, dude. Like I'm telling you, man, when we have military bases all over the world, we do, bro. We do. We're number one in all these categories, and yet enough is not enough. Like it's kind of like unsettling in a sense, because we need to conquer and manifest destiny or reign over the entire world. Like what is that? You know what I'm saying? Like, and then not only are we the best weapons creator, we're the best weapons exporter. So we have the strongest military force, and because we live in such a surplus and such an excess of the weapons that we have, we pass it on over to other countries willing to pay the highest price, the highest bidder. And you know who that is so far as of a couple of decades? Saudi Arabia, the Middle East. If you look at the atrocities that we're helping by being the number one weapons exporter, you already know that this shit has to come to an end. Sorry to be so grotesque. These are what America stands on. These are America's number ones. We're not number one in healthcare. We're not number one in education. We're not number one in upward mobility and social progress. We're not. And we like to believe we are, because this is land of the free, home of the brave. But is it really? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's all I gotta say on that. The topic of today, America. I like to think of these all-American ideals that we have, and I like to pay attention to the individuals that we label all-Americans, right? So think about who we call all-Americans. We call all-American heroes. We think of these all-American heroes. Who we think about? Who do we think comes up to mind with these all-American heroes? We think of soldiers, obviously. And then as of late, we thought of our healthcare workers as heroes. So you think about just these two examples, right? Let's take the heroes welcome. So we look at the heroes welcome that we've given soldiers. And in the 1960s, they were seen as like very anti-war movement going on. So of course there were people that didn't believe what soldiers were doing was good. Of course there were people that shunned them and treated them as bad. Not like the government couldn't do that, right? The government couldn't have that going on. So you fast forward now to the 2000s with the war on terror. Here comes again this idea of the American soldier as American hero. Let's fast forward a little bit even more. We already know the war on terror was BS. We already know the war in the Middle East was for a war on oil. And then you look at the treatment of these soldiers that are coming back home from all these wars, from going into the desert, from going into these lands and invading, and the grotesque images and the things that the barbaric, carnal things that they've had to see and experience. I feel for, in all honesty. Everyone should, because no one should see that. Fast forward into how these veterans are treated. They're treated like dog shit by their own government. And a lot of military veterans will say this. They're treated terribly by the Veterans Affairs Hospital. They're treated terribly. A lot of veterans are homeless, and I feel for that, right? A lot of veterans are out here homeless on the street, fighting in a country that they went out fighting for and has never fought for them in return. And it's terrible. Like, if you look at the military itself, like it paints these, and America as a whole, it paints these people as heroes so that they could saint them in this hero-ness, in this hero halo. Once it's over and it's done with, and they've done all they wanted with these people, they toss them off to the side. They chew them up and they spit them out. Why promote that, right? You look at these all-American heroes, these advocates, and what do we do for them instead of providing them proper health care? We give them claps. Everybody at 7 p.m., let's get a round of applause going for what our healthcare workers are doing. Those that work in the entertainment industry know one secret that the healthcare workers found out. Applause does not pay the fucking bills. Instead of providing healthcare workers with the proper personal protection equipment, PPE that they needed, masks and gowns, surgical tools, what the fuck do we offer them? A round of applause at 7 o'clock for months on end. I don't even know if that shit's still going on, all right? And that shit was dumb the moment that came about. Like, applause does not pay the bills. It does not cover you. It does not protect you. Like, it only boosts you up. But like that's what people offered, really. And you look at the military and their budget and what they allowed to have through their budget. It's like, yo, it's an infinity bucket, bro. Like it is a bottomless pit of money that we throw at our military to terrorize the world and to terrorize us. So much so that the leftover they have slides on over into the police departments, and now we have a military police and we have a military state. We have a police state going on, bro. Like. Thank God for coronavirus, for exposing us in 2020, for exposing us and giving us a clear vision of what's really in front of us. Another topic I want to talk about relating to the American ideals are American holidays. Now, if you know, in 2020, a lot of things been going on with holidays, and they have been going on for some time. All right, and first and foremost, in 2020, Juneteenth should be declared a national holiday. And if you celebrate it, good for you. Shouts out to you. If you didn't, you need to. Juneteenth should be a holiday because it celebrates the day when Texas slaves were found out that they were freed, and they had been freed for some time. This is not something that should be taken lightly. This should be something that should be really celebrated. It came months after the Emancipation Proclamation. Slaves had still been working. It took government forces, it took military to come in and say, hey, you are freed. Union soldiers came in and said, you are free to go. You are a free person. You value now, finally. Think about that. Plantation owners, slave owners, they kept people working months after they were supposed to, which leads you to believe, which shows you that these people are not to be trusted to do the right thing. When laws become laws, they will find loopholes. That's just a real quick summation of Juneteenth. I have not done justice. I'll be linking in the show notes more reliable Juneteenth sources for you to look at and do your own research, which is what I inquire you to do. Another holiday that we need to focus on today, I feel like, should be the 4th of July. Now, for the 4th of July, for me personally, has been canceled until further notice. I do not feel right. I do not feel good celebrating with fireworks and food and family. A holiday that paints America out to be this grand country and this grand continent. I don't agree with that because it isn't free, all right? Is it un-American to say that the American holiday should get canceled? Like, is it really wrong for me to say that July 4th should get canceled off the strength of no one is free in this country? All right, we're in a military police state. On top of that, like, we're in a pandemic, and we've seen what the government can do or hasn't done for its people. There are a bunch of other lands out there that are being terrorized by America right now. Physically, yes, and metaphysically as well. You look at Puerto Rico, what's going on with statehood. I think that once Puerto Rico is free, then we can celebrate the 4th of July. Once Hawaii is free, then we can celebrate the 4th of July. Once ICE releases these kids that are in concentration camps, because that's what it is. ICE has concentration camps, FYI, if you didn't know. Once these kids that are in cages are released, then we can celebrate. Once black people are given reparations, then we can celebrate the 4th of July. Once everyone is free, then we can celebrate a free holiday. Until then, July 4th is fucking canceled. Now, the last holiday I want to look at in the American holidays segment is I want us to take a look at a holiday that hasn't been but should be. For many Americans, voting is seen as a luxury and something out of reach for them. For a lot of us, to vote on voting day is ridiculously hard. And that's why I think voting day should be a national holiday, right? Not only should we be given the day off to vote because it is our American duty, but we should also focus on the ways that voter suppression has kept us from living. We should focus on how voter suppression has affected us to this point. Those that can't afford a day off from work aren't gonna go vote, even though they should be voting. These are our American people that should be voting and should be having their voices and their vote be heard. Now, it's not a luxury, it's a right. It's your American duty. After the last election, if you haven't noticed, you definitely need a day off at least, or the week off, if you go back to the 2016 election to process everything that just went on. All right, I know that after the 2016 election, I had to take a day off and be like, what the fuck just happened and what the fuck is about to happen? And that's something that should happen on a national scale and a global scale. Voting day should be considered a holiday so that everyone can process who's been voted on, what transitionary procedures need to be in place, and what the future could look like. And you know what I'm saying? Without having voting day as a national holiday, you have people rushing out of work to go place bets on and vote for people that they don't know anything about. They haven't done the proper due diligence to do research because they can't, and it's no fault to them. It's the way voter suppression has worked in this country for a couple decades, to be honest with you, even more than that, probably centuries since the inception of America. I will go as far as to say that this has been going on since the inception of America. And you look at who has been allowed to vote, only white men with property were the very, very, very first voters that were allowed to vote. And then it became white men who were married with women. Then the women could vote. And then slowly and surely it became more and more regular that all American people could vote. Now that's wrong. It shows you where America's priorities have been. I think moving forward, people should be allowed to have the day off to vote, and all Americans, regardless of your immigration status, regardless of your criminal status, regardless of where you come from, you should be allowed to vote. It doesn't make sense to me that this state with X amount of people has more power and more say-so than this state with X amount of more people or less people. Everyone should have a fair say, at the very least. And that's where I believe America should go, and think about the changes necessary to make voting day a national holiday. Continuing on with the episode, I want to talk about some American beliefs. Right? I want to talk about what America believes to be true, holds near and dear to their heart. These American ideals, these American morals, values, and interests, philosophies, at the end of the day, have been perverted. If you look at the things, when you take a close look for yourself, and you learn the real American history, the one that you haven't been taught in school, the one that hasn't been made available to you, those beliefs have been unavailable and out of order for millions of Americans, out of reach for so many people for so long. So if you look at liberty, let's just hold liberty, because that's something that we've been promised as Americans: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. If you just look at liberty, if we were serious about liberty, would we have a prison industrial complex that keeps millions of people in jail every year? That if you believe in liberty, you would have restorative programs, rehab, therapies, community centers, houses, safe houses, all aimed at getting to the source, the root of these problems. If we believed in liberty, we would focus on lowering the recidivism of these criminals, quote unquote, and we provide chances for everyday Americans to receive liberty, to have a chance at liberty, at life, and the pursuit of happiness without any obstacles in that pursuit. Let's look at another belief system. This idea of equality, this moral, this value, equality in America, American equality. It's been preached about on, and yet we're not equal. Americans are not equal. If you go back to the very beginning of the inception of America, people were not equal to, quote unquote, American ideal, which was the white man ideal with property. Black slaves were considered 3/5 of the person, not because it was the just and it was the moral thing to do. It was so that the South could have a better leverage and a better representation in the government among the rest of the country who participated in the system, were complicit in these systems. And equality is a farce. Equality is a joke. To be screaming about all Americans are equal, that's not even the vibe. That's not even the case, fam. Sorry to burst your bubble. Like, that's just real, bro. Now let's look at another ideal that people hold very near and dear, this idea of American hard work. Now, American hard work, people of pulling themselves up by their bootstraps, and that's a phrase that a lot of people use, a very specific people use. So you look at this idea of hardworking Americans, it's really easy to say that these lazy, good-for-nothing complainers need to just shut up and pull themselves up by their own bootstraps. Now you look at the people that say that, it's really easy to say that when you've had a family, parents, grandparents, an entire family to help you, to provide you help when you needed it the most, and then that have built wealth to pass it on to you. All that shit is easy to say, right? And it's not the idea of hard work, this belief of hard work that is American. It's a lie. People like to believe that is, but the real American belief is nepotism, or giving your family, looking out for your family, giving your family the one up. That is an American idea, looking out for the people closest to you and no one else. I don't give a fuck about not a single motherfucking person, right? Now, like, why would that be so? You know what I'm saying? Like, those that preach to oppress people, to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, those that preach that you should just get up and get it on your own, like, it's all bullshit. Because not only do you have a system that provides you a boost and a pathway to success, but behind you, for millions of black and brown people, these systems are not in place. There's a different road full of grass, full of rocks, full of gravel that has not been paved well and has been destroyed. It's not equal. It does not look the same for every person. The darker you are, the more shade you have, the worse the road is, quite frankly, and that should not be the case. So, mi gente, it's time we look at something that I wanted to take a majority of the show to discuss, touch on in its entirety, is American capitalism, which I have a huge gripe with, because American capitalism leads to these patterns and this belief that money rules us all. And I get it, cream gets the cream, cash rules everything around me, get the money, y'all. I'm with that 100% of the way. If we look at it as a country, our country's capitalism, it's disgusting because we export imperialism, we export colonialization, and we import profits drenched in blood money, drenched in the blood of these countries of that we've raped and pillaged. Essentially, let's be very upfront. This idea of looking out for our pockets, looking out for our profits, it's a very old-fashioned idea that we found in slavery. It is using labor, workers, to build yourself up. Capitalism is slavery's grandchild, essentially, is what I'm getting at. It's corrupt to the core. It is. It ties in this idea of the labor force, the workforce, to the labor force and the slave force back then. How people do not see these correlations and these connections, I have no, but it's right there in our faces. Now, if you look at what American capitalism has done for American jobs as of late, right, we outsource jobs to third world shithole, quote unquote, countries for the sake of profit, making us the literal shithole country. Corporations export abusive work practices from Americans that they perfected in America to third world countries, to other countries where the labor is cheaper for the means of saving a buck, saving an extra, pinching a couple of dollars here or there, and we infiltrate them. The military infiltration leaves them distraught, and then the real oppressive, we infiltrate these countries, destroy them internally, and we offer them these opportunities for American success and prosperity, and it's all a lie. This opportunity for American prosperity and for more money leaves them destroyed, and it's the ultimate demise. If you look at capitalism or what it does to us here, it's tied us to our work, our identities, our entire belief of who we are is directly tied to what labor we do. And that's disgusting, fam. Ugh. So like, let's really believe it. Like, let's say we're having a face-to-face conversation, which in 2020 is not happening anytime soon. But let's just say meeting someone new. What do you ask them? You ask them, what do you do? The thought behind that question is, what do you do for work? What do you do for money? What do you do to survive? And people say, oh, I'm this, I'm that, I'm whatever. But a lot of people don't really talk about who they are in their spirit. When people ask us, so what do you do? I tell them, I am a peacemaker, peacekeeper. I don't tell them I am a worker of sorts. I tell them that I am a way maker. And I'm not focused on the capitalist mindset. I'm not focused on money. I'm not focused on the financials. I focus on what drives my spirit. So when people ask me, what do? I tell them I'm a comedian, I host a podcast, I'm, Latino. I'm not focused on, like, a lot of people. Then, once I do these tactics, the bluntness comes into play. So what do you do for work? And what does that lead to? It leads to another ideal, right? Let's say someone's asking you and you evade, you duck the question, or you don't tell them what you do for labor. They still want to find out what you do for work. What do you do to make money? Why is that? Because they want to know where they stand in comparison to you. People ask that question and say, oh, like, if your response was a doctor or a lawyer, they'd be impressed. Or say if you were someone that was a janitor or a healthcare worker, or a lot of these jobs that are meaningless, like a caregiver in a sense, they would then look at you and be like, oh, I am superior to you. That gives them the necessary ego boost that they need to live just for that day. Like, really think about what capitalism does to our psyche and to who our identities and how we identify and who we identify with. The reason why I hate capitalism so much is it makes socialism out to be this dirty thing. And capitalism says that the market should be free. We should have a free market. And a free market is free of government intervention, government involved. So we think that the market is free and that government should not be involved until these capitalists need a bailout. And who is the first to get bailouts? We've seen already with the 2008 recession, banks already got the bailout. They got billions with a B, a bank billion bailout, right? And it was a handout. It was a fucking handout. Now, as of today, with the CARES Act and these loans given out to small businesses, we've already seen these billion-dollar companies, these million-dollar, multi-million-dollar companies already receive a huge chunk of those handouts, and the American people have been let to wither. The American people have been neglected, uncared for, and improperly provided for. And who's the one that's gotten the biggest slice of the American pie? with our American taxpayer dollars? It's not us. It's not the American people, not the American taxpayer. It's these CEOs, these multi-millionaire, billion-dollar companies. Like, billionaires don't pay taxes in a capitalist system. They buy the system, and that's why capitalists love the capitalist system, because who are the people that pay the most? The bottom half of American society. Meanwhile, the top 1% does not pay for anything. Nothing. No business taxes, no wealth taxes, no estate taxes, no none of that stuff. And the name of the game is blackmail, right? Even if you look at philanthropy is just tax write-off. Why do people give just enough? Why don't these billionaires trickle down their wealth so that they help out the American people? Because it's not that way. A lot of people say the system is broken. Nah, bro. The capitalist system is alive, working well, and fucking rigged. And it has been since it was created. I think it's now time to talk about a little bit about the language Americans use. I find it interesting, at least because, like, let's say we look at the past 10 years, the language that has been going around in this country, right? We have this idea of diversity and inclusion, this language of diversity and inclusion that comes about, and I find it a little disheartening, right? Because it's the same half-hearted, backhanded compliment meant to coddle and to pacify people through the use of language. It's just, you see in a lot of cases, when Americans say just the right words, they can convince you of anything and everything, right? So you look at the actual diversity and inclusion of things, it's not really diverse, it's not really inclusive. People just say that as like a whimsical. And the same could be said about thoughts and prayers. Every time the victim of a gun violence, mass shootings come about, and these school shootings come about, what happens? We offer our thoughts and prayers to the families, to the victims, to the survivors, without any actual substantive action taken, right? And I'm all for the Second Amendment. However, there comes a point where there's just so much harm, so much suffering in place that it becomes immoral. And that's what's going on right now, man. There's just too much leniency with who should get a gun and what gets a gun. But instead of offering any actual legal action, any changes, societal changes, a law, legal changes, what is offered? Thoughts and prayers. And we don't need no fucking thoughts and prayers. We need laws. We need actions. We don't need filibusters. We don't need meaningless words. We don't need none of that shit. We need actual fucking laws. And yet, who are the kinds of people that offer these thoughts and prayers? They're the exact same kind of people that do nothing about it because it disrupts the status quo, does nothing for them. The last piece of language that is like concurrent with them, with the last two, would be the phrase of "we hear you, we see you." This phrase of "we hear you, we see you," what does that do? Okay, you see us getting oppressed, you hear our plight, and however, you see us, you hear us, and you refuse to do anything to help us. Are you helping us? Are you actually doing anything for any outright progressive change? Or do you have a refusal to disrupt anything that is not with you? Like, do you not understand that racism affects us all? So are you like with us? If you see us and you hear us, are you with us? Are you against us? So either you're with us or you're against us. If you're with us, stand with us, do with us, be with us, create laws with us. If you're against us, get the fuck out of the way, because we're building a new America. With that, I want to talk about the global perspective of America and the international view of America. Now, from the outside looking in, America has ravaged, pillaged, and burned every continent, every major continent, put it that way, in the world. We're talking about countries in Africa, through the slave trade, through the poaching of animals and the land poaching that goes on, through the exportation of important resources to African countries. We're talking about the Middle East with the war on terror, with region destabilizations and the bombings and the war on terror and drone bombings that have been going on. In South America, we're looking at coups. We're looking at the overthrowing of governments that were not for America. We're looking at the seizures of lands. And we're looking at the modern slave labor that's going on, which is the immigrant workers. We look at these points and passages of American terror, and you realize that we are the terrorists. We are the people that go out in other countries for them to do our bidding and to do what we need to for these countries to benefit us. Whether it's importing things into America, providing for our people, or it's going over to those countries and making them our own. And we see that right now with what's going on in Hawaii, with the ravaging of these lands, of these native indigenous Hawaiian lands. It's not ours. It's not American. It's not. We should just let them be. Same goes with Puerto Rico, and the same goes with every country that we're doing this to. It's, quite frankly, why Americans have a shitty perspective in the world. A lot of Spanish people know that if you're coming from America to a European country or whatever other country, it's best to say you're not American. If you're whatever other race or nationality, it's best to just go with that, fam. Because once people hear that you're American, the looks come, the questions come, and it's like, yo, like, what the fuck? And then on the flip side, a lot of people in European countries, they can tell who's a tourist because of the look Americans have and the behavior and the mannerisms that Americans have. We're very, very, very self-entitled. We're very selfish people, and we've been bred that way. We've been born that way, and that's what's noticeable about us. So I know for a fact when people tell me that they've been outside of the country, and I ask them, well, like, you know, like, how did you explain? How did you explore? They would explain to me, you know, it was best for us to say that we were from another country, from our home country, and speak that language. Like, I've known Latinos to speak Spanish in European countries, and they would tell me that, like, yo, yeah, it was best. We just felt it safer because we didn't want that American stigma placed upon us. That's just a little travel tip for you guys. Whenever we're allowed to travel again, if you're traveling outside, say you're not American. All right. Oh man. So the last two things I want to talk about would be America's demise and America's rebirth. These are opportunities for America to redeem ourselves after what we've gone through. Now, when we look at America's demise, where do we start? I mean, I could go back to the inception of America, right? I can go back there. Our demise came about with our election of Donald Trump. I don't just say that because of the actual election of Donald Trump. I don't just say it came about with the election of Donald Trump, but it came about with what he brought. And what he brought was his overall appeal to nationalists, white supremacists, neo-Nazis, of these American ideals of making America great again. If you haven't known, is a KKK slogan, catchphrase. Once you find out that, you find out everything you need to know about Trump and his intentions for America. He believes himself to be a nationalist, has given the nationalists a voice, is a product of these nationalist views. And when we think about of those who so desperately want to make America great again, and those that are urging us to keep America great again, exclamation point, despite what has been happening under this administration, these people have a very special set of privileges and a view of themselves related to the world that doesn't allow them to see what's really going on. Under this gusto of making America great again and keeping America great, the government has destroyed America. Not just for black and brown people, but for all Americans. Our worldview has been distorted. How we treat each other has been distorted. Our beliefs have been slashed and gutted. If you are a black and brown person in America, you understand that for you, America has never been great. You understand that you had to work twice as hard to get half of what has been promised to other Americans. Understand this, black and brown people are what made America great. We are what makes America great. And without black and brown seasoning, America would be a country without plate. The American plate would just be a pile of rotten mayonnaise. All this to say, I am happy to be an American. It's just I'm disappointed about what we've inherited as Americans, and I'm confident that a new America is on its way. Once we recognize what we've inherited and what we need to change, then the real dream, the American dream, can be fulfilled. And what I will say is the American people have begun waking up by the thousands every day, daily, and I love that. 2020 has given so many people the clear-eyed view that they need. I've woken up and I continue to waken up. The awakening is ever happening. The more that we wake up, the more we recognize what America was and what America can actually be and what is needed to move in the right direction, the better a chance that we have at building a new America and a new world for right now and for the future. Honestly, so what to do? What is it going to take? Now we need to keep awakening. If you're finding out about something, if something you're just finding out about is a little too hard to believe it. Okay, all right. If it's too much, take some time to process and release as needed, because the awakening is ever happening. There are some days where I realize, yo, like what? This cannot be happening. Was this a law? This was legal? This is something that continues to happen? Process that for some time. Take some time for yourself to ingest that and understand this is what we've inherited in order for you to be able to understand what's needed to break these things. But I will say that I want Americans to keep learning and keep reading. As a student of the public educational system, shouts out to Miami-Dade County Public School, I would be remiss to not shout out American Senior High. Shout out to all my patriots. Shout out to all my charity heads. Shout out to all my theater peeps, my heritage players. Shout out everybody from American, because y'all gave me something great from America. My high school, my alma mater, American Senior High, was founded 1976, the American Bicentennial. It was created on this idea of an equal America. That school was a project that came to be. It first started off with a population of a third black, a third white, and a third brown, a third Latino. I love that. It grew to be something during my time that led me to have people from all different walks of life. Black and brown friends, best friends. I saw my white counterparts. I had white friends, you know what I'm saying? And that helped me understand America in a small bit as a whole, after some reflection, after some time away, to see that wasn't how America was nationwide. I had to come out of my American bubble and experience the world elsewhere and see what America looks like for millions others. All that to say, shout out to my alma mater, but all of us, myself included, were fed lies. We were taught lies in our American history and who we are as Americans. So it takes intentional work to unlearn beliefs and relearn better beliefs, the truth, see the sunlight for what it is. Nothing that we learn in school can be trusted until it is vetted and corrected and researched by you. So don't trust it until you believe it and research it for yourself. All that to say that in the show notes, I'll be providing a list of books, a couple of books, something for you to educate yourself on, the things that we discussed in this episode. I'd like to give a huge shout out again to our sponsor for the day, for the episode. Shout out to Posh Faces. If, again, you're looking for your beard kit to get your beard game going and join the Beard Gang Nation, head on over to poshfaces.com. Use the promo code GROWTH for 10% off and your checkout. That about wraps up this episode, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning into another episode of All Growth. Please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. Follow us on all our social medias, on Twitter at AllGrowthPod, on IG at AllGrowthPod. All right, much love to y'all. Shouts out to y'all. And remember, whatever you do, keep growing, keep glowing, keep going.